Welcome to the U3 Media Podcast, where our mission is to unite the world through coffee. I'm Christy Ross, and joining us today is Yannis Apostolopoulos, CEO of the Specialty Coffee Association, also known as the SCA. Welcome, Yannis. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Very nice to see you, Christy.
You too. So I want to provide a little bit of background on you. You attended Harvard Business School. You started your career in marketing management for several companies. You then worked in the beverage industry, which also included coffee. So walk us through the how and why you ultimately made the move into coffee.
Thank you, Christy. So I started in wine, spirits, and beer industry, as you said, and pretty much I've done every beverage that we consume besides water, never done water. So back in 2010-9, the company I used to work for, we decided strategically to go into coffee. And I became more interested in coffee and ending up meeting some really nice people, which pushed me more into the area of specialty coffee, which I found something that is really close to my heart because we're trying to make coffee better. I started volunteering back then in Specialty Coffee Association of Europe, the chapter in Greece, and eventually joined the board of SCAE. So for me, it was a move because specialty coffee has something that is really close to my heart. As I said before, it's about people. It's about fostering those global coffee communities and supporting activities to make coffee more sustainable, equitable, and thriving endeavor for everyone in the value chain.
Yeah, well, so, you mentioned the Specialty Coffee Association of Europe, and when you served on the board, it was during a time when the US and Europe were beginning their merger. And then you served as the deputy CEO after the merger and took on the ED role at the time of both great opportunity and significant challenges, bringing these two organizations together. So give a little background on the merger, sort of the why behind it, and then how you assembled your team and engaged them in this visionary project.
I think both the Specialty Coffee Association of America and Specialty Coffee Association of Europe, they shared a lot of common values and a vision of what their purpose was. And their purpose was to actually try to make coffee better. Mm-hmm. So instead of having two organizations trying to do that, the boards thought that it would be a great idea for us to merge to try to create bigger gravitas within the specialty coffee industry to try to push for our agenda. And that was a very valid reason for us to merge. Also, the organizations was kind of competing like for sponsorship money or for influence over geographies, and that didn't make any sense, especially if we are in the non-profit world trying to do something that is completely altruistic. There is hard statistics about that around 75% of mergers fail. Only 25% of those succeed. And it was apparent more than ever before that we had a strong vision to make coffee better, but we had to make this work. What I can say is that everyone who works in SCA, they believe and they're passionate about the coffee industry and what we are trying to do. So just like you and me, it was easy to assemble a team that was inspired and motivated to implement that vision. Mm-hmm. We had to overcome a huge challenge, and that was to create, I would say, in quotes, a unified culture after the merger. We had a lot of us and thems between people working on the two heritage organizations. And I think the best catalyst/accelerator for this was the pandemic. We really saw that our community came together and rallied when we were faced with survival and the shared responsibility to provide ongoing support for the stakeholders on the entire value chain during those challenging times. So yeah, it has been like a roller coaster ride, but I think looking at it today, has been a very successful, I would say, ride, and we are in a very good position to try to bring up topics about value distribution and sustainability, and how we tackle issues as a specialty coffee industry in general.
Sure. Sure. Well, and you talked about actually conducting that merger. I've been through over 40 mergers, acquisitions, capital raises, startups in my career. And one of the top things that many don't pay attention to, but need to, is culture. Culture should be number one on that M&A, checklist in my belief. The other thing you said too is, as the pandemic happened, and I feel like this happened, all over the world, is it really did bring people together in a completely different way, unifying them to where they, previously were competitors. What experience in your past, Yannis, like in your past career, helped you in being able to effectively respond in this moment of crisis?
Well, I don't believe there was anyone who had previous experience in navigating something like a pandemic. No matter how many crises you have experienced in your career, I don't think something matches that. I do believe having a good team, a good board, having peers like former colleagues, classmates, mentors, friends that you could actually pressure test ideas, and being able to speak openly about what are your thoughts and how we're thinking of navigating it, was very helpful. So I would say clarity of thought, realignment to our purpose, and was what encouraged us to to put the right priorities there, to get the organization on the right track. I think transparency was key. Like, we were communicating with all our stakeholders what was happening. There were very difficult decisions to be made through that process, but I think when you are transparent and you're doing it because of an alignment to a specific purpose, and you know where you want to get to, you find the ways to get there.
So coming out of the pandemic, the organization stabilizes, right, and is growing once more. Would you say that maneuvering the pandemic was your most challenging task as a leader?
Well, managing the pandemic was definitely once in a lifetime experience. But I wouldn't say that it was the most challenging task as my tenure as a CEO for SCA. I think that undoubtedly the most challenging task was to create um, a, an SCA, and I would bring a singular organization and cultivate that global culture that we have today, and shifting away from what I just said before between us and them. You just said it. Culture, it's strategy for breakfast, and we know that. And also creating a team that that works. And for me, people sometimes confuse the work. Okay, the word team is like a group of people. They say that they work together. I don't think it's a group of people working together. I think a team is a group of people that they trust each other, and it's completely different. Like, you see all these successful teams in basketball everywhere. Like, those are people that they trust each other, that they will have their backs, how they play the game, how they do things. And I think same goes for business.
Yeah. So, okay, so I want to talk about some of the initiatives of the SCA. One is the coffee value assessment, which is a major initiative. Probably one of the biggest undertakings in creating new tools for how we all discuss coffee professionally and globally. So aside from updating the older cupping, this new system takes into account issues around sustainability, provenance, pricing, and other factors to assign value. So how do you think this will impact buying decisions for medium and large roasting companies?
So thank you. That's a very good question. So the the coffee value assessment system that we presented, it's a holistic approach on how we discover value, how we capture value, and how we actually distribute value along value chain. The capping form that you referred to is a part of it. Capping form was the part that captures mostly the values that has to do, like the attributes that has to do with flavor profiles, and people correlated that part with quality, which is part of the value discovery. But there are more things in coffee, as in everything, that we appreciate. So we went back to the very basic idea of what are the attributes that play a role into valuing coffee. So the first thing we did is that we defined a new definition for specialty coffee. And we said that specialty coffee is a coffee or a coffee experience, and because of its distinctive attributes, it gets more value on the marketplace. And I'll give you a simple example that I've been giving many, many times. If for everything that we we have a perception of value, we need to know more information. So if I'm about to tell you, like, I want to sell you my car, what is the value of my car? You don't have an idea. If I tell you, so my car is a Volkswagen, and then I tell you it's a Volkswagen Golf, and it's 2019, and it's this model, this many miles, those are the extras, has been on an accident or not. Like, the more information you get, the more you're able to value something. And at the moment, the way that coffee is traded is, we have the commodities coffees, and then we had like specialty graded coffees that we said they capture a score of like 85 plus, 80 plus and we said, okay, those are specialty coffees. And there was like an 1-to-1 correlation between like that score and the price. But we know we value much more than that in coffee. We value who is the producer, what is the process, where it's like, what is the origin. Um, like, there are much more, many things that we do there.
Right.
And we said we want to kind of like be able to understand what is objective versus what is subjective. So we said, okay, we're going to do the grading of coffee, of the physical attributes. We're going to do like um, the the assessment when it comes to taste, and the profile of what we are tasting, which is 100% objective. Like, sensory science has moved over the last 20 years that we have this form, because this form is same till 2004, to actually capture the sensory part of it. And then we said we want the affective part, what we like and what we don't like in coffee. And pretty much coffee is like wine, or any other product. And what I like in coffee, because I like, let's say, natural coffees, it's completely different from what you might like in coffee. And we need to capture that. Because if we think big, the people who cup coffees, they think they're consumers. What are their market that they want to sell? So they're buying coffee based on their consumers. And the consumers, for example, in Greece, they like different coffees from the consumer, let's say, in Japan, different kind of profiles. And there, I would say, if we capture that, we can make correlations of like what are the consumer preferences in order to associate that with like how we discover value. The whole idea is to create a system that like captures data and shares that data between like producers and buyers. A producer don't have to take all their coffees and come to Coffee Expo that we do every year in the US if their coffees are not the right coffees for the US market. Yes, the US is the biggest consumer market in the world, but your coffees might have value somewhere else in the world. And if we're able to capture that information and share that information, we will also be able to address that I would say, knowledge or information sharing gap that we have in our industry.
Right.
And then we will be able to have more conversations about, okay, this is the value that we see in coffee. This is how we discover value. This is how we capture the value. So, how do we distribute it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key thing to have as conversations in the future.
Yeah. How do you envision this transition taking place?
I think that this is an evolution. It's not just redefining. And we're not expecting people to start using the new system from one day to the next and it's
Mm-hmm.
like a complete switch.
Right.
The industry will need to figure it out and have the meaningful for conversations to change things. So I would say that will that impact the current scoring system? Yes, because for example, we've seen that we said that 80 score, and most of the coffees we grade are between 80 to 90. Like
Mm-hmm.
we saw that this is an issue in the new affective scoring, which is just like subjective scoring of how much you like the coffee. It goes from 0 to 100, so you
Mm-hmm.
will have a bigger spectrum to express how much you like something. um, so it's an evolving tool, and I think that people along the value chain, they will find ways on how to adapt and use it. And the idea is to create a system which we review this more often. So we have this current form until 2004. ISO, the International Standard Organization, says that standards should be reviewed every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't done so as an industry. So research has happened, things are happening, but we're not doing so. I think that the system aspires to be a powerful tool to help measure and facilitate value assessment and distribution. It simultaneously integrates advances in sensory and coffee science,
Mm-hmm.
making it compatible with scientific research for the first time ever. So that's how I see it's going to take time,
Okay.
uh, but I think it's going to be something that will help the industry a lot to have more fair conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a positive change that I think will have a great impact across the value chain. So, okay, so you have a number of other initiatives happening too. One of the other initiatives for this coming year is the Coffee Skills Diploma, sort of encompassing all aspects of coffee from farm to table.
The coffee skills diploma is, as you said, encompassing like all aspects from farm to table. Um, we know that traditionally the most the success that we have seen in, I would say, Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific region is what drives most of the certification. But it's also important to understand that we have been changing the program to make it more skills and competencies relevant to other geographies. So recently, we have seen, for example, the US certification going up, like UK, like Middle East, which is growing very fast in specialty coffee. So I think that depending on how mature a market is, especially in what they're looking in specialty coffee, you see different kind of demand and supply dynamics in every region.
Sure. Well, and so just a quick note on sort of what the structure was before. So there was green, there were five areas. There was green, roasting, sensory, brewing, and barista, right? And
Yes.
now there's four main categories, which is basically a cafe diploma, roastery diploma, coffee trade diploma, and then sustainable coffee. which I love the fact that it's sort of like taking those five and putting them mostly into those first three categories: cafe, roastering, and coffee trade. But then the sustainable coffee, I love that you made that a completely separate diploma, because it is so important with climate change and everything else happening in the industry. But just give a little bit of background on sort of why the structure the way that it's structured now.
So it's not a complete reorganization. So we do still have the five, um, and those I would say are more skills oriented. So you still have the barista, brewing, roasting, and those get you certificate. They will get you like the three levels of certificate we have.
Mm-hmm.
But then you were collecting points to get a diploma. What we are doing now is that what we're trying is to combine the level of knowledge that you have in each of those,
Mm-hmm.
and based on those you are getting a cafe diploma or a roastery diploma, which kind of gives you a more holistic knowledge in actually going and working in, like, in a cafe or in a
Mm-hmm.
roastery. It's not just roasting skills. It's
Mm-hmm.
like roasting skills with sensory skills, with green skills, and like foundation for sustainability. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you want, as we said before, you have the skills, for example, in barista or in brewing, there is a module which goes from foundation until professional for sustainability. And those are, let's say, verticals. But the horizontals are the new ones: the cafe, the roastery, and those are trying to take skills from
Mm-hmm.
all the verticals to say that you have like a more all round knowledge,
Yep.
and to go and do a work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more related to actually what people would expect you to know if you're coming to work in a roastery.
Right. So, and it's application of it,
Yes,
right? It's taking those skills and how are you applying it in the workplace?
it's not
To
quite competencies though. Competencies is we provide the knowledge. We don't certify that you have the competency. It's
hmm. Yeah, no, it's a good distinction. It's a good thing to point out. So really helpful. So are all of these classes and certification, earning these diplomas, are those all in person, or is there any component that's actually delivered online?
So most of the foundation classes are available online, and this is something that was one of the things that we did during the pandemic.
Okay.
And also the sustainability program, most of it can be online.
Hmm.
There are the hands-on classes that needs to be in person, but
Hmm.
there are significant parts of the curriculum that are available online.
Okay, good. That's helpful. Okay, so there is the Specialty Coffee Association and there's the National Coffee Association. I recently interviewed Bill Murray, the CEO of the NCA, as well. Both organizations produce quite a bit of research. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between the two organizations? And then on the flip side, talk a little bit about how they collaborate.
So the National Coffee Association in the U.S. is an association that is specific only to the U.S., where SCA it's a more global organization. We have presence in more than 65 countries. NCA, it is the body that brings the industry together to lobby and advocate for legislation regarding to the U.S.
Mhm.
We support NCA, and we have been working very closely together. We are really good partners, and I think we're complementing each other in many ways. We might not agree on every topic because it's the bigger industry versus the specialty coffee industry that sometimes it's more of a niche. But I think that we're complementing each other in many activities, and that we try to support our membership base, and not being competing in a world that we just need to actually support each other to advance the industry for the specialty coffee and the coffee industry agenda in general.
Yeah. Well, I also see that there is a lot of collaboration by the SCA globally. I saw a new alliance was announced with the ICO, so International Coffee Organization. Share with us the purpose and the benefit of that alliance.
So with ICO is the International Coffee Organization, as you said, and it's the organization where governments are coming together to talk about the future of coffee, and it has a huge impact on both producing side of the world and consuming. We have been a partner with ICO for many years. Recently, we formalized that an MOU, which was outstanding for years. I think ICO will help us, and we're going to help the ICO in initiatives like educating producers. We're creating a new framework to be able to allow producers to have access in specific training about markets. And I think that in the world that we live today, partnerships is key. And if any of us wants to be successful and not being redundant, we need to work together.
So, as the reach increases, how will that shape the role of the SCA, would you say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a very good question. I think that the SCA needs to push for consumers. Like coffee is very similar to wine, as we know. It's all about taste and how consumers perceive the value of what they are drinking, and becoming it's moving more from being a functional beverage to becoming an indulgence. And we're going to push in more activities and activations toward consumers, and we're going to bring training to the consumer, because the more informed in the consumer and the more trained it is, I think that will give us the opportunity to create more value from the consumer side, and it's key for our industry.
I absolutely agree with you. In entering the coffee industry, and again, being new to coffee, coming from financial services for decades, entering the coffee industry, I realized there's quite a big difference between coffee professionals and the everyday consumer on understanding the true value of specialty coffee. And so that's, cost wise, but also the appreciation for the flavor of it as well, just the sensory behind it. So, how can we bridge that gap?
I think to bridge the gap, it's going to take time. So I'm going to go back to the wine industry. Some years ago, people were consuming wine and it was like white or red. And then it became like, okay, what kind of wine? And then we went to blends and brands and producers, and that was mostly driven by the appetite for consumer to learn more about something that they enjoy consuming, and get educated. So we had conversations recently with the Wines and Spirits Education Trust, which they're providing the Master of Wine program. They told us that on an annual basis, the people that they educate, it's like 58% are consumers and just 42% are wine professionals. In the coffee industry, we know that most of the people that they take education is coffee professionals, and we need to actually do something towards consumers. We need to start communicating that coffee, um, it's an indulgence, and you can find different tastes, you can find different kind of attributes, and give them to understand like what is the value chain, who you're supporting. And there have been organizations that have been doing this work for many years, but not when it comes to the indulgent side. And we as specialty coffee need to push for that.
So, is there one piece of advice you'd give to someone that wants to enter the coffee industry that came from another unrelated industry?
As I said, key for coffee industry is people. So for those who are transitioning into coffee, my advice would be to actively engage and meet people within the coffee community. Building strong connections is always a great place to start.
Yeah, so true. Networking for sure. What about a piece of advice for individuals that have always been in the coffee industry, but they want to take the leap to start their own coffee company in some way, shape, or form?
I think no matter if it's coffee or anything else, would be to trust your gut, like embrace your instincts, be innovative, and confidently embark on whatever journey you see yourself in the coffee sector.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so very coffee focused on these next few questions. Can you share a general coffee industry stat that you find interesting?
That's a very good question. So let's see. I would say most coffee consumed today is still the product of small family-run farms, where the farmers themselves provide most of the labor of nurturing, protecting, picking, and processing unroasted coffee.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so along those same lines, share a random fascinating fact that most coffee consumers probably don't know.
Coffee has such a unique, complex flavor that despite a century of trying, nobody yet has been able to discover the chemical source of coffee's taste.
What about coffee farms? You just mentioned something that was really, I think a lot of people don't know about the smaller coffee farms. Is there any other thing that you wish more coffee consumers knew about the coffee farms?
Understanding that coffee, like cocoa, has been for years, has been like products that were like the epitome of colonialism years ago, might change the perspective of how we see coffee and cocoa that we consume every day.
Yeah. Okay, so I am going to shift to what I call the U3 top three, which are very brief answers and all about your preferences. So, your favorite brewing method.
Espresso, by far.
And that doesn't surprise me. I mean, just I feel like anybody, from Greece, if you're not drinking espresso. So for consumption, coffee drink of choice, is it just espresso on its own, or is it espresso with something else in it?
So there is a beverage which is very, very popular in Greece, which we call Freddo espresso. And that is something that I miss a lot while being in the US, which is practically uh, an early version of what people call cold brew today. So it's a double shot of espresso on a specific type of blender with ice. Um, some people put sugar on it, and it's like a frozen espresso beverage.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Why aren't we doing that in the US?
I don't know, like cold
And so,
brew took its place, and I think it's important and it's growing. People like
yeah,
cold beverages.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So wait, so what is the name of that?
It's called Freddo espresso, and there is
Fredo.
like the version with milk, which it's a cold froth milk, which is
Hmm.
called Freddo cappuccino. So
Okay.
it's a Freddo. Yeah,
Yeah, love it. Okay, and how many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
uh, tough to say. I would say between 5 and 6, 7, something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what I have found too, as I asked that question, Giannis, the definition of a cup of coffee also ranges from 5 ounces to 8 ounces to 16 ounces, across the board, which is interesting. That may be
Exactly.
another thing that SCA can standardize.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and all this wonderful information. I want to give you an opportunity to share where someone can learn more about you, about the SCA, or about becoming a member.
So I would say that our website is the best way to learn more about SCA. And if you're interested, the topic that it's very hot for us is the value assessment. And that is sa.coffee is our website, and sa.coffee/value assessment is where you can find things about the coffee value assessment system and what we talked earlier on. And if you are around in any of our trade shows next year in Dubai in January, in Expo in Chicago in April, in Busan in May in Korea, or in Copenhagen in June, happy to meet you there.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Yannis, and for all that wonderful information. And of course, thank you for helping us unite the world through coffee.
Christy, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thanks to you, our followers, for joining us at U3 Coffee. We'll see you next time.